Hi, everyone. Can you hear me? Okay. I'm Karrie. I am one of the co-founders of SoundGirls. I'm going to moderate tonight. We really want to be able to have you guys get your questions answered. So we're going to try to keep the panel as short and concise as possible. So the people on our panel is Amanda Davis. She's a front of house engineer. She works for Janelle Monáe, Tegan and Sarah. What are you doing right now? Tegan and Sarah. She also has worked for LMA. She's worked on cruise ships in churches, and she's currently moving into production managing. Then we have Whitney Olpin at the end. Whitney is a monitor engineer. She does do front of house also, right? Occasionally, yeah. She's mainly a monitor engineer. She has moved into production managing. She's worked for Lauryn Hill, Fitz and the Tantrums, Sublime and Rome, Walk the Moon, and she's been working for iHeartRadio mixing monitors. And she's currently moved into third-party production for Live Nation. So Whitney's got a wealth of experience. Chris Costello is head, right? Is head of production for Warner Brothers right now. She has also been a tour manager and a production manager. She's worked for Alicia Keys, Perry Farrell, Deadmau5, and The Strokes. She's overseen live concert production in over 55 countries. And has consulted on performance spaces built for many corporations. So that's a wealth of experience right there. Meegan Holmes is currently sales for Los Angeles 8th Day Sound, doing national and international sales, right? Meegan's worked in the industry for over 25 years. Before she moved to 8th Day, she worked for Delicate Productions, doing essentially the same job, right?
Project management, technician.
Yeah. And she's worked as a tech and has worked as an engineer. So, sitting right next to me is my comrade, my touring comrade, Kille Knobel. She is currently the LD for Pearl Jam. She spent the summer with Smashing Pumpkins, right? She's done Bette Midler, Cher, Temple of the Dog, Soundgarden, and when she's not on the road, she's at the Jimmy Kimmel Show. She's also a mother to 3, are they all teenage boys now? No. Two teenage boys, 1 teenage boy, and 2 that are going to be teenagers soon. And she's managed to tour and raise them, so. Clara Murphy is our backline tech. Probably, if they say that there's only 5% of women working as engineers, sound engineers, lighting designers, there's probably 0.1% of women working as backline techs. And Claire is one of them. Claire's been working for the last 3 years for Vance Joy, 3 or 4 years now. She's also toured with Therapy, the Dum Dum Girls, Ravenettes. And are you still running Trash Tours? Yeah, it's just storage now. So, but she was running a rental company. And then finally, Kate Lee. Kate Lee used to work at Musicians Institute. Kate is originally from Taiwan, and she's been in LA for how long? 7 years, 7, 8 years?
Yeah, 7 years.
She is currently has moved into working for Rat Sound Systems up in Camarillo. She's doing a year, I believe, a year in the shop, and then she'll be out as a system tech for Rat. And then she also does freelance sound. So, I am Karrie, and I've worked in live sound for over 30 years. And I tour with Kille. I do monitors for Pearl Jam and Eddie Vedder, and I've been doing that for way too long. The main premise of this panel is to give everybody an idea of the different roles in live production, so that you can decide, or maybe something will spark your interest of, that's what I want to do. So I think we've assembled a good mix of people that have different talents and different experiences and plenty of advice. So I gotta find my questions. My printer broke, so sorry. My printer didn't break, my internet broke, so I couldn't print. Okay, I think we're going to just start if everybody briefly can share with the audience what your educational background and training is, because I think it's different from all of us, and anybody can start, whoever wants to jump in.
I guess back in 2012, I went to school briefly. I went to the Art Institute in New England. It's out in Boston. I never graduated. I went for I was going for an associate's, and I think I dropped out at about a year and a half. Started working at a venue. Learned from there. That's it.
All right, so I actually graduated from this room, particularly, and Ted was one of my instructor, when I was in school. So yeah, I attend MI 7 years ago, and I do audio engineering and live sound program for 9 months, just certificate. And afterward, I also get some connection from the teacher that work here. He's still my mentor by now. So after I graduate, he give me some gigs, and that's how I start. And afterward I come back to MI, got hired and start doing production sound, and just last year just moved to work with Red Sound.
I went to Cal Arts. I was there for 4 years. I graduated with a degree in sound design. And my junior year, I started working for a stagehand company. And so I already had a job when I graduated. And that was it. I was glad I went, but I was just telling somebody earlier, I feel like I learned how to network there, but I didn't really learn much about what I do now there. So there you go.
My education background, I have a bachelor's in vocal performance from Roosevelt University in Chicago. And I just didn't want to sing anymore, and I had to figure it out how to stay in the music industry. So I went to SAE in Atlanta, did the 9-month program, and at the time, that curriculum is completely studio-based. I had 4 days of live sound, and my mind wasn't even there, so I really did enough to pass the test and thought I was going to be a studio engineer. So the live sound thing came about because I just needed some money, and I realized I didn't want to sit in the studio for free for 20 hours a day. So it was kind of self-taught in churches and clubs and stuff around Atlanta, and just ended up on the ship, and that was my education.
I have a degree in music technology in the UK, or from the UK. It was about 18 years ago, so there was nothing available for live touring. So that was the closest thing I could do. And like Meegan said, I might as well have just gone to rehearsal studio. So the education was great. It shows that you can stick at something, but I don't use any of it right now, I don't think. So it's still useful, and there's definitely more resources now. But my degree didn't lead me to what I'm doing now. Stagehand work would have been better, and also just literally trying to get on a tour or working in a studio. But I did come from a degree of music technology, so I know audio terms, which I guess is somewhat useful.
I went to university in New York, and I was pre-law. I double majored in politics and law and philosophy, which has zero to do with touring. I don't think education matters that much in school as it applies to the road, if that's what people here are trying to do. The best way to get experience is just to be out there and be physically doing stuff on the road, get your hands dirty, and it's, in my opinion, the best way to learn. In the interim, I worked for record labels, and that's how I got into the industry, but once you're in, you can easily move around.
I actually went to a performing arts boarding school because I was raised overseas, and school only went up to 9th grade, so we all went back to our home countries, and I was interested in the arts, so I started in high school. And by the time I was done with high school, I really knew I wanted to specialize in lighting. So I also went to CalArts with Meegan at the same time. And I agree with what everyone's saying in terms of probably being able to learn the majority of what I've learned on the job and in practice. And certainly colleges don't have the money for the kind of technology you see after the fact. But there were some skills that I picked up there that I think were pretty valuable. I don't know if it can justify the expense, but certainly as a designer, learning how to communicate with artists and talk about pretty esoteric things, getting my feet wet in that department in college and working with, choreographers and directors and kind of developing a language and vocabulary to talk to fellow artists. And then the other thing is practice. As a designer, you can have a lot of theory, but until you get your feet wet doing it and practicing, it doesn't mean anything. And so just having the opportunity in college to have a safe place to make mistakes and just do show after show after show after show was pretty valuable.
Is there any type of training or education that you would recommend people pursue at this point, looking back on it? Looking at all the trade schools, colleges, programs that are out there, is there something that maybe you would have done differently now that there's more opportunities, or is still, do you think, being on the road and doing the shows is the best experience?
I learned a couple of years ago that there is actually a class on tour management at UCLA. I wasn't even aware of it until they approached me and asked me to teach it, which I ended up doing for a couple of years. Had I had that, it would have saved me a lot of headache and a lot of mistakes that you just otherwise learn by doing. But, again, it's like we can tell you all of these things and teach you as much as, possible in a classroom setting or in a forum. But you learn by doing, and you learn by being within the environment of the road or the show. It's the best way.
I would say you have to learn how you learn. School is helpful, and it could be great for some people, because it was great for me, because when I went to SAE, I didn't know anything about audio. I literally knew nothing. But it gave me the foundation to do what I can do now. So it was helpful for me. But I still had to do a lot of learning on the job, which then I learned how I learn, and that's doing. I think that is a combination of it. And these schools just need to develop their curriculum more if they're going to be offering these classes and things to people. But you have to learn how you learn. So if reading a book and being in a classroom setting is how you learn, then that's the way to go. But if you know that you need to be physically doing something, just go to some clubs or go to a church. Even if you're not religious or anything, in my opinion, church is a great way to learn, because it's the same thing every Sunday. So you can do different things, approach things differently to figure it out.
You didn't even look at me. You knew I wanted to say something. That's funny. I like the idea, if you want to do live, is I don't know if 8th Day does it, but VER, Claire Brothers, they do this paid training now. I don't know how long Claire's been doing it for. Does 8th Day do that?
We have a flat day rate kind of intern. We have a flat day rate intern situation. where basically you come and you work in the warehouse with us, and if it is working out, we'll hire you full time. But we only have so many of those positions, obviously. But as people kind of move up through the ranks, because our goal is to help somebody achieve their dream, right?
Right.
So if your dream is to tour, then we're gonna try and give you the strongest foundation we can, technically,
Right.
to put you out on the road.
I'm just impressed by that. Like those companies that do that.
You have to invest in your employees.
Yeah.
You have to. That's
But
the only way.
I guess my point was I didn't know that was an option. You know, when I was looking at schools, I was like, oh,
It wasn't
okay.
an option when I started.
Was it? Well, okay. It is now. And I know some people that have been really successful doing that. Instead of going to school, they went to VER in Nashville and they got paid minimum wage, 40 hours a week to train in the shop. And then they got sent out on tours, and that was their start. You know, they didn't have to take out student loans. They didn't have to do school. You know, that's another option if you know that's what you want. I mean, where else to learn but from the best, you know?
Right.
Yeah, that's what you're doing.
Yeah. So like, well, I attend school, and at least like I got all the like foundation knowledge, and I also get a lot of hands-on experience. I think that's very useful because like back in the day, well, even now, like back in the day, like I just moved down here and I still have a language barrier. So like hands-on experience is really good for me to like figure out the stuff, because like in class, like a lot of time I still not quite get it because of the language barrier. So like hands-on experience like help me to learn all the basic knowledge, and but it's only like a 9-month program, so like it's very limits. Like after how I feel, it's like the more you know, the more you don't know. So like after I know, yeah, like I learned all that basic and I get out there, I found out like, whoa, there's still like a whole new world out there. And even like I start with rats, I work in the shop last year, there's still tons of stuff I never see it in my life. So
You're never gonna know it all.
yeah. So it's like, yeah, so like now, like still I'm in the shop, I'm learning every day, and there's still some stuff like I'm still not quite get it, and like every day like still very challenging, and like, yeah. But overall, it's like, I think it really, the education is really depend like on everyone, like, but like I remember back in the day, like there's no VR clear, like at least I don't know about it. That's why like I come to school, but you know but it's like someone like I don't have a background, I don't have any connection, I don't know anything about audio. I think that this is like go to school is a good option to learn the knowledge and you get connection.
Anyone else?
I have one thing to add. Yeah. I just want to highlight something that was really paramount in my early career, and that was finding a good mentor. And it wasn't like a formal arrangement, but I was just lucky enough to work with a woman for about a decade, and she had been doing it for a long time at a time where there really and truly were no women. And that relationship, like having an actual teacher in the workplace, someone that I could call anytime for advice. To this day, I can call her when, you know, I have questions about what to negotiate my rate for, or like, I've never done this type of show, and getting sort of real world advice. And if you're lucky enough to find that person and have that kind of relationship, I think it's really valuable.
I literally had the same experience. I went to work at a rehearsal studio because I knew I had to be around people doing the job I wanted to do. I didn't know how I was going to make the next step, but I met someone who was a guitar tech, and he was my mentor. And I asked him literally, how do you restring a guitar? How do you do it? How much should I charge? Literally everything. And still to this day, I'm like, oh, how do you use this new piece of equipment? Because he's already bought it. He's already there. So yeah, literally finding that one person, he opened the door for me to tour. Literally that one guy. And I didn't need to go to university for that. But there's a place for education, but you also can look at YouTube and just go on a tour and learn it. Most people who are guitar techs are ex-musicians. They have not done a 3-year degree. But if you're in audio, most people have done some sort of education in it. But finding a mentor is 100%. You need that. Just for anything. Like, how do you open a door on a tour bus? So anything. You don't know when you start, do you? You don't. So yeah, super important.
Okay. Are we? No one else has anything to add to that? Okay. I'm going to agree with the mentors is really important. I went to, there were no sound schools or trade schools when I came up. I took 2 classes at a sound school. It was a studio that decided that they were going to run a sound school. So I took recording 1 for 6 weeks and recording 2 for 6 weeks and 6 weeks of electricity. And then when we got to the 4-week live sound portion of it, I dropped out and went on tour. So I learned more from my mentors and working on the job on a day-to-day basis. So mentorship is super important. I still have mentors today. I still couldn't do my job without them. I called them up. How do I do this? What do you think about this? Okay. The next question that we are going to talk about is everybody has different job responsibilities, whether they're working a local one-off or if they're on tour. So I wanted everyone to briefly describe what their job actually entails and what you're responsible for.
So I'm a monitor engineer. So that means that I run the sound for the artists on stage, whether that's in-ears or wedges. And that also means usually wireless. So I'm dealing with RF, live mics, in-ear transmitters, sometimes comm systems, ClearComm, which is like a communication system, usually between front of house and monitors. Would be a basic setup. So, I mean, that's the basics of my job. It's running the console. So usually it's usually side stage if you're lucky. Sometimes it's hidden under the stage. Sometimes it's back in a hallway.
Ideal.
Yeah. So you know what? Sometimes it's better when they don't see you. I've learned that. I've had some of the best shows ever when they cannot see me. Where is she? I don't know. But that's the gist of it.
So now I'm working at the shop. So basically, our day is like a prep and de-prep. Prep is basically just like prep a show. So we have no matter it's a weekend off festival or like a months or years tour. So basically, we will have an account manager. He's a guy that like talk to client or talk to the production, the band, all that to figure out what they want for the console, or it's like how big is the tour, like, or it's an arena, it's an outdoor, or whatever. And then he will has like everything planned out, like the PA map. And like we will have a thing like pull sheet, so basically show us like what we need to pull for this tour. And at RAT we have like 3 departments: cable department, speaker department, and electronic department. So I'm in electronic department, which is, except the cable and speaker, is all our department, like console, distro, RF, microphone, splitter, anything you can think about, and the amp rack, all that. So like according to the pull sheet, we will like pull the stuff, and the most important thing is like doing the line check. So basically when the speaker department and the cable department all have their things sorted out, we have to hook up all the cables, hook up all the like consoles, splitter, hook it up, and do a quick like line check, making sure like everything is work. Like consoles work, splitters work, all the cable works. Like we have to go through all that, like it's like quality control. And then we pack it out, like making sure, all right, great, everything is good. Like, so we send it out, the stuff. Like, so we load in the truck, bye, see you next week or months, you know. And yeah, and deep prep basically just like stuff come back, and normally we will get like, not normally, like it really depends, like if the band or the client they have an issue with the equipment, like, you know, things break down on the road and all that. So we'll get email like, hey, like we have a problem with this amp. So like for deep prep, we will like dig in, and I found out what stuff is broken, and then we try to fix it. Like we have to fix it. But if like something's really complicated, like inside the amp, like the whole thing has to report, and then we send it out. But like, yeah, basically like we have to, when stuff will come back, we check it and making sure like, everything's good, and then we put it away. So that's kind of, and also deal with a lot of like last minute things. Like there's like, oh, in the morning they were like, oh, we just had this brand new pull sheet and everything has to be done and loading the trunk by the end of the day. And you're like, oh, great. So yeah, so that's kind of like the what we do in the shop is just basically like prep and de-prep, and yeah, pretty fun.
Thank you for partially describing what I do. I'm a salesperson, and I deal with the client. I'm, according to my boss, I'm the client-facing person. Basically, if it's a tour, I'm taking the tour rider, I'm making sure that we can supply all the equipment for it. I help with the packaging. I'm a conduit, basically, of information. I do all the pricing, which is tedious. And then for local events, like today, I walked through a nice house in Malibu for a wedding, and I'll figure out where the speakers go, figure out how we're going to execute it, put price tag on it, send it to the client. I also hire all the personnel that does our shows out here, so that's another part of my day. I've hired both Whitney and Amanda. Let's see, that's pretty much it. I also am the general manager of our branch, so I do a lot of the hiring of the full-time employees and obviously all the freelancers that work for us. And I deal with all the mundane, like the toilet's broken, the roll-up door doesn't work, they just hit it with the forklift. The forklift is leaking horrible things all over the warehouse floor. Yeah, so that's my fun job.
Meegan is basically who you need to know at 8th Day Los Angeles. That's all you need to know. My job is different depending on the client, because Tegan and Sarah and LMA, I was production manager and front of house. With Janelle, I'm just front of house. Front of house engineers, basically you do the sound for the audience. If our job didn't exist, then you wouldn't have a show, basically. You couldn't hear it. And that consists of sometimes working with people like Meegan, securing gear, getting the console that you want to use at front of house, building an input list along with your monitor engineer. And depending on the size of tour, the tier of touring I do, mainly Janelle and Ella and Tegan and Sarah, I'm basically building front of house on my own while on tour. So you really have to know the gear and what your the type of show that you're presenting and things like that. As a production manager, I'm in charge of the production. So I have to secure everything, not just audio, lights, if there's video, make sure backline is taken care of. And that taking care of all that depends on your style. You have to figure out. My first time doing production management was with Tegan and Sarah about 2 or 3 years ago. And I'm grateful to them for giving me the opportunity, because I was like, oh, I have to care about things now that I don't care. I don't necessarily
care about the lights before.
I did not.
It's okay. Kille won't be hurt.
I did not. Exactly. And like our first or second show, the lighting console froze, and my LD told me, and I'm like, what you telling me for? But as a production manager, I had to find another console, basically. That's your job as a production manager, is to take care of the production. And that includes everything in that production consists of, whether you care or not, whether you know about it or not. I don't know anything about lights. I don't know anything about video, but I have to secure that gear. So the years of experience did help to do that job. It does currently help to do that job. But it's a lot of responsibility. And I did like 6 months with LMA doing both jobs, and then went into Janelle and just doing front of house, and I was so relieved. I just couldn't mix a show. But yeah, being a production manager is fun, and it makes I am grateful because it makes you more resourceful. And it grows you, it keeps you sharp. Because as you have to secure the gear, even if you're just like doing audio and securing the audio gear, you have to really know what you're securing and how to handle the gear, how to work the gear, and everything else. So,
well, as guitar tech, I look after all the guitars, obviously. At the moment, or for the past couple of years, I've just been purely guitar tech, which is like the mecca of being a stage tech. And that is basically loading in all the backline gear, tipping the truck, which could have audio stuff on it as well. Then setting up the stage, which could have amps, could just be guitars. Past couple of years, it's just been guitars and DIs and a pedal board, couple of pedal boards. I restring all the guitars. They're basically my babies. I look after everything to do with the guitars, make sure they are working, they're set up, they adapt to different weather conditions. But also I do look after, I could be doing the whole band. So I'm actually going out with Amanda, and I've just found out that I'll be doing drums and keyboards. Thank you. So that's cool, because I'm going back to that now. So yeah, basically anything you if you see that person come on stage doing a guitar change, that's me. On stage, wearing black, at the changeover between support band, main band, somebody running about, that's probably me, doing the roadie shuffle. If you bend down, you can't see me, basically. Yeah, and that's pretty much it. With guitar tech or backline tech, your job pretty much finishes when the trailer or the truck closes, and at the end of the tour, your job is done, unless you're in rehearsals. Which, coming from, I actually tour managed for a little while. I really like guitar teching because you just stop. You have a defined start and end of your day, and being a tour manager and production manager is the same. It's 24/7 and you do not stop. And for a period of my life, I loved that when I had a BlackBerry and I wanted to be in control of everything. And now I don't. I don't want to do that. So, yeah, that's an important part of why I'm a guitar tech now.
Yeah, That's pretty much exactly right. My phone has not been turned off in about 15 years. It's constantly on. As a tour manager, you're looking after pretty much everything. On a high level, you're planning the financials and making sure that the artist walks away with as much money as possible from that tour. If you are the type of TM that cares about it, and it's shocking to see that some don't, so be the type that does, because that's your gig. You are creating the budgets, you're managing the budgets, you're dealing with all the accounting sometimes. Not every artist is able to afford a tour accountant, so you're dealing with so much money coming in, so much money going out, and it's a lot. If you're lucky, you have a production manager on the tour. Sometimes you do, sometimes you don't. In the cases that you don't, you're hiring the crew, then you're dealing with all of the vendor contracts, you're negotiating all of the vendor contracts and the crew deals. And then, then there's the artist, and then you have to look after them. Sometimes it's one person, sometimes it's a full band, sometimes it's not just them, it's their managers, it's their agents, it's their lawyers, it's the publicist, it's everybody who's calling you nonstop, 24/7. And you're communicating with all of these people. I think we're going to get to that question next, but the communication is such a huge part of what a tour manager does and a production manager. Because you're responsible for disseminating that information and making sure that everybody knows where they're going and how they're getting there and when, in order to make it as much of a well-oiled machine as you possibly can on the road. So that's a little bit of what tour managing is.
Yeah. I got started in the business as a programmer, which was a really great way to develop your eye, and you basically, you do all the programming of the lighting console, working with the designer on the show. And some designers are super hands-on and specific, and others you basically do the whole thing. And so I did that for a lot of years, and I'm like a pretend programmer on Kimmel, which is how I'm able to go do my little side projects. I spent a lot of years as a lighting director, which is basically you take out the show for another designer. And I always took a lot of pride in that, because it's hard as a designer to hand your show over to someone and know that they're going to take care of it in a way that reflects your aesthetic, and you'll make choices maybe that you wouldn't make personally, but you'll make them on the designer's behalf in terms of how they wanted the show executed and maintained. And then I had kids, and so that slowed my role in the full-time touring world, but I've been able to design throughout the years and still do that now. And I'm able to go work with bands I really love, like PJ and others who don't like to tour for long lengths of time. I can't go out for 18 months at a time, but I can go out for 4 to 8 weeks, a few times a year. And as a designer, you work, depends on the type of show, but for a concert, for instance, you start at the beginning working and communicating with the artist and production and, conceiving the show, executing the show, designing it, packaging it, doing all the deals with the vendors, picking equipment. And then you get to the programming phase where you sit in a dark room for days, never enough time, that much I can tell you. Days on end where you just crunch and crunch and crunch for hours on end. And then the third phase is the maintenance portion, which is running the tour. If the tour is short enough, and if it's a band I really love, it's what I love to do the most. I'll go out and run the shows. Running a time code show as an LD is not that interesting, but running a rock show where you're really integrated into what's happening on stage, there's nothing I enjoy more, so I still will do that occasionally.
My job is the same as Whitney's, so we don't need to go over that again. What does everybody feel is the most important skill that they have or need to do your job? Whether it's technical or people skills, communication.
Not knocking my water bottle over, that'd be good. For monitors, I think about this a lot. I think that for me, it's really been personality-wise has been more important than anything else, honestly. If you can't communicate with your artists, you could be the best tech in the world. But if they don't trust you, if they don't like your attitude, I mean, they speak directly to you. Hey, this doesn't sound good. Hey, I don't like this. Or hey, that sounds great. Or help, my pack's falling off. You know, it's like, how are you going to interact with them is really important. Being self-aware has been really important for me, especially just on tour. You know, being aware of your surroundings, being aware of how much space you take up. You know, like you don't want to step into somebody else's space. You want to kind of be aware of them. Like, are they having a bad day? Like, is my singer having a bad day? How should I approach that? You know, just being aware of your surroundings for monitors has been really huge. Technically, knowing my console. Like, there's been times where people ask me what kind of console I want on a show, and if it's a really demanding show, I know it's a demanding artist, I might go with a console I know better than maybe one that sounds better or is the standard at the time. You know, I've done that before. I got called in on a show, and they're like, hey, this is the console we have rented for front of house. Are you cool with that? And I was like, what's the house console? And they're like, oh, it's a Soundcraft. It's a VI 6000. I was like, cancel the other console. I'm just going to mix on the house. I'm like, really? Yeah, really, because I know that desk better. Save your money. I'll take that, you know? I think that, especially nowadays, prioritizing your time, because a lot of times with monitors now, they want you to do the mixing, right? But also dealing with all the wireless. It's kind of like those jobs have been always maybe together until recently. I don't know, started splitting them up to be having an RF tech. I mean, unless you're on a big tour, you're not going to have that. You're going to be dealing with all of it. So I try to prioritize that because I need to have good frequencies. I need to make sure everything is stable. It doesn't matter how good my mix sounds, but if my wireless is going down, we're going to have problems, you know? So I try to stay up on top of that. Something else would be, you know, like I said, communication with your artist, like knowing how to speak and talk to your artist. If there's a problem, what are you going to do? You know, I think about that a lot. I'll be like on an airplane flying to a gig, and I'm going over the show in my head. I'm looking at maybe it's a new artist. I've been doing a lot of fly dates lately, so it's like I'll just come in blind. I'll come in blind on a show, never met them before, maybe never heard their music. I'll listen to it. I'll look at the input list. I'll look at the stage plot, and I'll kind of familiarize myself with it. And I'll usually, actually almost every time, we'll load a file if it exists on the editor, and then I'll page through it. Make sure it feels familiar. If there's something I don't like, you know, I'll change it, or I'll know my exit. You know, what am I going to do if this goes down? What do I do if you know, if the drummer's ears go out? What am I going to do? You know, I think about these things, so when they happen, I don't panic. You know, I'm like, I have a backup plan. I know what I'm going to do. That's really important on monitors, because like if you're at front of house, shit goes down. You know, Amanda's looking at me, right? Like, what's the monitor engineer going to do? She better fix this shit right now. You know, so it's like Karrie knows what I'm talking about. I better get on that. You know, they're counting on me to fix that because she's out there, you know, trying to run the show. So it's a lot of pressure sometimes. So it helps me and makes me feel more confident if I imagine those scenarios in my head. You know, most of them I've already been through at this point. But just staying calm and having some kind of solution helps.
No one answer this question? Still thinking? We'll come back to you. For what I do, I get a lot of phone calls when things aren't going well. Sadly. Rarely does somebody call and say, oh my God, everything's great. Thank you so much. We always say no news is good news. Yeah, if it's quiet and we don't hear from an artist that's on the road, it's like, oh, they must be doing okay. And then there's the inevitable, it's Saturday night, it's about 9:30, mentally I'm winding down and my phone starts blowing up. And we have a console problem that needs to get fixed. So unfortunately, I'm not there. I didn't break it, but it's somehow my problem and my fault. And I've been yelled at so many times over the phone by people who I maybe have never even met face to face. We've had email conversations, we might have talked on the phone. So for me, staying calm and being sympathetic to what somebody's going through, having toured myself as an engineer, both monitors and front of house. I've been a system engineer, I've been a monitor tech, I've been an RF tech. I get it. It's frustrating when the gear isn't working and you can't figure out what's wrong with it, and your artist is standing on stage looking at you like, what are you doing over there? And you're like, but the console's not working. It's frozen. I get the phone call, fix it, make it better. So I'd say one of the assets that has carried me through my career is staying calm. And it ties into what Whitney was saying, where you do not think clearly when you are flipping out. You think clearly if you stay calm. Nobody's dying. Nobody's bleeding out. This is an emergency room. It's a show. There's a ton of pressure making it work, but the best thing you can do is just stay calm. And I every day I use it. Every day I use it because I usually, when something isn't right, I get the phone call. I'm on the receiving end of unhappiness. Now, I get plenty of accolades at the end of tours. You know, we get a lot of, hey, it was great, the prep was amazing, the gear all worked the whole time, how it was labeled was great. Those always feel wonderful, and that's great, and I pass it along. But I'd say more often than not, if somebody is displeased, I will hear from them, Amanda, I'm sorry your console didn't work that one time on German. So yeah, and then also the diplomacy of owning what is your mistake or what is your failure, what is your error. I think that there's a lot of people that like to blame and push the blame of something onto somebody. Of course, you can blame the gear. If the gear fails on you, the console failed. Like, it's not your fault, even though they might look at you like it is your fault. But ultimately, the console failed, and there was nothing you could do. But if there was something that you did wrong, owning that and saying, that was me. That feedback, first song, I did that. Totally my fault, So yeah, humble, honest, stay calm.
I would have to say that my skill is the same as me, staying calm. Like she said, it's not, we're just doing a concert. You can calm down. Like, yes, I hear it too. I'm the front of house engineer. Like, yes, I hear it. Why are you asking me, do I hear that? Like, that is the worst question you can ask an engineer. You hear that? No. Like, if I didn't hear it, why am I here? But you can't respond that way. You have to stay calm. And because that does assure people, even if they're barking, you being calm does assure them that you're going to handle it and that you have it under control. If you're barking with them, then nothing's getting done. Nothing is getting done to solve the problem because you're both barking. But if you are calm, then they probably won't admit it at the time, but they're cool because they know you're going to handle it because you're calm. I think another skill of mine is especially being a production manager, I interact with the artists on a very human level. Like, I know you're an artist. All these other people love you. I love you too. I'm a fan of all my clients, but we're still two humans interacting. And I can't give you all of that because we're at work. You have to keep that in mind, that Even though it's fun, touring is fun. Doing shows at clubs, all of it's fun. But at the end of the day, you're at work. And you have to interact with your artists on that level. And they respect you more when you humanize things, because they understand where your head is. Yeah, and I think my musical background really helps, especially learning like classical music and different tones and timbres of things and everything helps inform me as a front of house mixer and how I approach different things.
Yeah, I agree with everything everybody has said. Two things I would add. For me personally, a big thing is being organized. Beside the stage, I'm dealing with the same thing, but they turn this way to look at me if a string breaks or something is going wrong with pedals. So I have to have everything, within a foot. A new cable, new pedal, batteries, being able to restring the guitar, another guitar, everything. So you have to think ahead to what can go wrong. What can possibly go wrong so that I know that I'm ready to try and fix it. But also, I think a lot of the job on tour is being personable. You're with 10 people up to 100 people, and you're in a small space, and you have to get along with people. And it doesn't matter. You can be the geekiest person, know everything about anything, but if nobody likes you, you're not going to last long. And if you have a bad attitude, you're not going to last long. And I've seen it where someone doesn't know that much, but they're keen and they have a good attitude, and they stay on the tour. It doesn't matter that they don't know anything, because they're going to learn. I think that's super important.
Yeah, I agree with everything that everyone said as well. Organization is key for tour managers and production managers. Attention to detail is key, and communication is key. Whether your tour group is 10 people or 100 people, you're ultimately responsible for them, their well-being, where they're going, how they're getting there, and just taking care of them. For me, it was never just about taking care of the artist, even though that's who's cutting your check. Crew are, to me, the most important. They are the first people in the venue. They are the last people to leave. Make them feel important. Make sure that when they turn up to a hotel, it's paid for and they're able to check in. Something as simple as that seems like it should be turnkey, but there are plenty of people that just don't pay attention to those details. But that makes or breaks, when you're on the road and you're checking in at like midnight and, your room's not ready. That's a drag for people. Making sure their PDs are paid. It sucks. It's awful. And then you're going to be the one to get the phone call anyway, so you may as well take care of it in advance with a pleasant tone as opposed to somebody screaming at you on the other end. Oh, and that's the other. I don't know if you would call it a skill, but you need a thick skin if you're going to be on the road. You really need to build up that armor. You're going to get yelled at by someone, whether it's the artist or the manager or a PM or a TM, somewhere down the line, someone's going to yell at you. And you can't take it personally. It's just the way that it goes. You will make a mistake. I've made thousands of them. And that's how you learn. But don't take it personally. Don't wear your heart on your sleeve. Just go in there and do your best and be the best that you can at that job.
The most obvious skills for my line of work are, a good sense of timing and my eye, but I agree with everything everyone's saying. I think personality and attitude matters more in some ways. You have to be skillful, you have to be competent, but being a good communicator and navigating those waters is critical. And especially if you're a department head, your responsibility, you have to see problems before they arise, especially with other departments. Like you're like the conductor for your department, and you have to liaise with other departments, some of which might be easy to work with, some of which might be really difficult to work with, and you have to get people on your side so that you can execute
the show, your slice of the show, and that might be anything from a cable path to like a really sticky, complicated cruise situation that you're trying to figure out with a production manager. I was trying to save a crew person's job on a layover from a flight home from Europe this summer, with a phone call from a production manager, irate, and you have to now know how to handle a myriad of personalities. Everyone from someone like on your cruise or that you're working with up to the very top, to the artist management. And it can be a very delicate balancing act, and I don't think it's something you get right out of the gate. I think it comes with time and experience. But I will always hire someone on my cruise when I'm putting crews together. The person I will always hire will be the person that has a good attitude, is head to the ground, works hard, works their ass off all the time, does not complain in a shitty festival situation where we've been going for 35 hours, and has a vested interest in the show, that they feel like they are a part. And that's something also that I try to always instill in the crews, because I want them to feel like it's their show. It's not my show. It's not, it's all of our shows. And I want them to care about the show as much as I care about the show. And so building that camaraderie in these really quick timelines is also something I think is really critical, because when you all get along, even with some difficult personalities, people will work hard and they'll feel an ownership over the show.
Yeah, I agree with pretty much everything. My main skill set is being able to communicate with my artist, paying attention to them. People are like, what's the most important thing about monitors? I'm like, paying attention to your artist during the show. I see people all the time, they're on their cell phones, or they're eating dinner, or they're talking to someone, and the band's going, hello? And I'm like, you were paid for 2 hours to pay attention to them. Like, what are you doing? So I never take my eyes off my artists unless I have to. And then RF is now probably one of the more time-consuming parts of my job. I wish it wasn't, but unless you're U2 or out on Beyonce, you're going to be doing RF yourself. So if you're the monitor engineer, I have a large monitor crew. I could push RF off onto somebody else because I don't really enjoy doing it, but I don't trust anybody to do it. If it's going to fail, it's going to be on me. So if you're going to go into stage patch, monitors, learn RF. And if you're really good at it, you can get a gig just doing RF, and it probably pays better. I don't know what exactly.
It does. RF techs make good.
They make good money, yeah.
And I will also say the way that technology is going right now,
it's getting easier.
Learn networking.
Yeah.
Especially if you'd like to be a system engineer, go ahead and pay attention to the networking. Understand IP addressing. Understand Dante. Dante is something that there are more and more systems driven by Dante, and more of a need for system engineers that have a very strong grasp of that and the networking.
Yeah. To piggyback off that, I just built out a performance space for Warner Music Group. Everything is Dante. Everything. All the consoles are connected to it. It's became a mainstay for everybody now, and most of the technicians that come in, they're just as much knowledgeable as an IT tech as they are, a front of house tech. It's crazy, but it's just the way it is now, and it's going to be an expectation from you. Yeah, for sure.
If you're system teching, you got to know it. I would know it if I had anything really networked in my world. I don't, so. But if I did, I would know it. But my system techs better know how to do it.
Well, as an engineer, though, I don't think that that's necessarily 100% a requisite to understand the principles of it and what's going on.
Right.
In the world. But if you're touring with a technician, that technician better know every little signal path that's going on there.
Which that leads, maybe I'm going to skip a couple questions or move them around. Technology, how do we stay on top of it? How does everybody stay on top of the newest, latest, greatest technology that has entered your world? Because it changes fast now. It didn't used to.
Lighting changes at a really rapid rate, so much so that it's just not something I'm interested in constantly keeping up with. So I really research technology on a need basis. I have my toolkit of things that I know that I like to use and my go-tos. But when I have a project and a specific needs, then I'll reach out to the vendors, get demos. But otherwise, I don't really spend my free time looking at lights online. But also, when you're speccing a package, often what we spec is somewhat dependent on what the vendor has and supply. So you may put a job out to bid and you'll have to change your initial design based on availability, or you may know your vendor ahead of time. So you may have some things that they don't have, and if you have a good relationship or the band has any clout or it's something they can amortize over time, maybe they'll buy it for you. But it is always a game of compromise.
Well, there's not that much that changes really in guitar world. Saying that, we are moving from actual amplifiers to amp modeling, which is what I've seen recently. And with that, I would go back to a mentor. I'm talking to fellow guitar techs and asking them opinions, how they use it, but also I can go direct to a manufacturer and they can send me the latest piece of equipment so I can try it out. So that's how I stay up to date on it. I don't know if it's that relevant in guitar world unless I've just been doing acoustics for a very long time. Not much is changing. Yeah.
I'm kind of like Kille here. I'm on tour so much. When I'm not on tour, I'm not trying to spend my time like working. And I know I need to stay up on technology, but I'm tired and I just want to not think. But when I do, when I am preparing for a tour, like before I went out with Janelle last year, I wanted to use a new console. So I called Meegan. She was preparing the gear for us, and I said, can I just come set up shop in the corner somewhere and hit buttons on this console and see what this does and everything that goes with that. And when I know I'm approaching something else that I either want to think about, like last week, I spent 3 days at YouTube Space learning about broadcast engineering, because that is something I want to know and I'm interested into moving into, but I know nothing about. So when the opportunity presents itself that I can spend time doing that hands-on, then that's what I do. I just use my resources from being in different venues and TV spaces and everything with my clients. I always talk to the head guys when I'm there, or there's never a woman there, so. And I just ask questions, and I'm not afraid to ask questions. You can't be afraid to ask questions, even if you admire this person that's in front of you or anything. Like, once again, they're still humans. Ask questions. And they, in my experience, they've been happy to impart information and just spend the time with me and show me different things and all the different technology. I learned Dante because for a year or two I was on a CL5 with Janelle, and that's the system that they use. Dante sucks. It is very, it takes a lot of time to learn that, but once you do, like now, it's becoming what everyone is using. So now I will be kind of comfortable on a Dante system. But that's how I stay up on technology. I just really, because I know how I learn, I need to do. I can read something all day, but if I don't know how to apply it, then it doesn't work for me. So I always just ask questions and make sure I'm doing something towards just building the catalog and the repertoire as an engineer.
I work for an international sound company, so I get to see all the cool toys. But you have to seek out the information, really. We do major, huge tours. We do itty-bitty tours. Sometimes the way that engineers want to use the technology is something I've never seen before. I'm lucky. I get to go downstairs, watch it be built, poke at it, see how it's working, ask questions. There are people who work in our warehouse that know way more than I will ever know. And a lot of it is because I don't touch it anymore. So, but when she asks for something that is something I've never heard of, go on the internet, check it out. Oh, that's cool. That's a nice compressor. That's cool. Right on. I see what it does. All right. And then when we get it and it's sitting in our warehouse, if I have time, I'll plug it in, put a microphone into it, listen to it. Oh, that's cool. That does that. Neat. I'm very lucky. And I get to stay on the cutting edge of technology because everybody that we work with company-wide, they ask for great stuff. And the cutting edge, cool new stuff. We've sent gear out on tours. They are basically doing R&D for whoever the manufacturer is. That R&D gets shared with everybody at the company. So I am very fortunate, and I am in a very fortunate position to be able to say to my friends and the people who work for us, you need to come and learn an SD12? Come on in and learn an SD12 and sit with your tracks and poke at it and mess around. Or look at, you're filling in for somebody and you need to sit on a profile and look at that file from the other engineer. We've got one. Come sit and learn it. I'm lucky, and I know I am, and I try and share that luck with as many people who work with us and work for the artists that we support, because the only way you're gonna know something is to touch it and work with it. So to be able to do that in an environment where there's no show tonight, there's no pressure, I think is a great learning environment. So yeah. And if you're gonna get into this, you have to embrace what you want to use and then learn it. And don't be afraid of it. And like she said, don't be afraid to ask questions of people who know way more than you. I do it every day. And I can't know it all, but I know the people who know more about this particular thing. I know the Digico guy. I can call him and be like, why is this doing this? I don't need to necessarily know how to fix it all, but I like hearing how we repair stuff. So there's all that knowledge. It feeds into what I do. And it helps me not be an idiot when I'm talking to an engineer about what they want to use on their next tour.
Yeah, I kind of second what Meegan said, because one of benefits I work in the shop is you get to see and get to use all that new stuff and learn stuff. And we have in the shop, we have a lead prep, he's a guy integrates all the system, and we also have a technical resource manager. Yeah, he's very knowledgeable. So when something networking, because networking is really a thing now, because everything from the RF, wireless to drive rack to program an amp, we use networking. Everything is networking. So that was something really I learned a lot from just working in the shop, because we have to do that daily basis. And a lot, yeah, but we are busy in the shop most of the time, but when there's slow time or whatever, I just grab a unit, I just grab a short in-ear monitor unit, I just plug in and start play with a workbench to name it, change the frequency, do all that, just try it. You're not gonna break it. just try stuff, and it's like you can't figure out, then ask. I just go in the office and ask our technical resource manager, hey, why can I do this? Hey, why my computer is not seeing this unit? And when our lead prep, like he's integrated like the whole PA, and we use L Acoustic, the network manager, is another beast as well. So like every time he's doing it, I will like just standing next to it and like asking question. Like, so, but like in the same time, like, I mean, the internet is like so convenient right now. Like a lot of stuff you can just found it just like by Google it. And a lot of time, like I'll be a little bit nerd. Like I just read a manual. Like I have to say, like the manual is a really good thing. It's a really good resource to learn. There's a lot of good stuff. Like when you read it, you're like, wow, I learned a lot. So, and I think like you can find it online. It's all free, you know. So that's a good resource. Just try, yeah. If you want to use something or you're curious about digital SD12, go online, read a manual. You don't have to read like a one by one, but like if you're a monitor engineer, of course you gotta know how to set up the outputs. That's how to set up the in-ear monitors. How are you gonna work on the send-on fader? If you are a front of house engineer, that's another approach. So you don't have to read the whole thing. It's like, it depends on like, okay, what are you gonna do on your job? Then figure particular things out first, so you know enough to do your job. And then later, if you, on the job, you're like, oh, I really have to know this, then go back to manual and then learn it like, oh, how to do this. All right, now I can learn. So that's kind of like how I like self-taught, and just by reading a lot of manual and also like just tried out stuff.
I'm really glad, Amanda, that you admitted to like going home and just chilling after tour, because like I learned that I'm not good at, I'll read the manual when I need to read the manual, but if it's like, oh, there's this new console out, I should read about it. Unless I see it in person and I get my hands on it, or I have a show coming up on it, that stuff goes in one ear and out the next. It's just like school, you know, you learn how to do a math problem, but then if you never practice it, you're like, how do I do this again? You know, it's like, for me, it's time wasted. It just doesn't work for me. I might read up on some specifics about it to see if it's capable of handling a show, if maybe I could switch over to it. If I'm really interested, I'll bother Meegan, like she said. I'll go to 8th Day. I've done that. I've done it a few times. Just gone and set up, tipped a desk and run tracks live through it and build a whole file or tweak something. She's a great resource. Having your network and like having people to call, I do that all the time. End up on a show and I'll call someone like, hey, I'm scanning wireless, but Workbench is doing this weird thing. Can you walk me through this real quick? Something I'm not doing right. You know, it's not networking, or I'm not seeing the devices or whatever, and they'll help walk me through it. You know, that's super important, having that person to call. For monitors, it's like really technology-wise, mostly what I'm seeing is like new desks. I see new desks or new configurations, maybe some different scanning software for RF. I might see maybe some different microphones. Usually what I do is on flight dates or festivals, like if I see something cool or like playback, I've kind of got an interest in that. I'll go and talk to that person on the other band and go, dude, what is this? You know, what does it do? Do you like it? How's it working out? You know, I'll start a conversation about it. And that's usually how I get a feel. But for me, it's always in practice. Or if I'm kind of like, I think with 8th Day, I took out that SD11 with Marion Hill, which was like a year ago. And I really didn't know Digicode desks at the time. And I was a little nervous because you never want to take out a console you don't know, you know, what if something goes wrong? I came in and played with it for a bit, 8th they showed me how to network it, what to do, and I took it out. And that was the best way to learn, because then I was just learning day to day. Now I feel pretty confident. Yeah, forced to use it, but have some kind of foundation. You know, they walked me through everything and gave me some time. So I think that's what works for me, technology-wise.
Yeah. Yeah. You don't need to see me. You want to move this? Yeah. Okay. I agree. I only learn technology when I have to. I know what's available and what's out there. I stay kind of abreast of what's coming out, and then choose the tools that I need to do my job. And if I don't know how to use it, then I figure out how I'm going to learn to use it. But just for me, knowing stuff just because, and I don't need to use it, and it's not something I'm going to use for a show I'm doing, why? You know, there's so much so it's knowing what tools and when to use them. And what I would use for one artist might not be what I would use for another artist. Since we're all, yeah.
Can I just say that that's really interesting, because I don't know if it's a female thing, but everyone here is like, I don't geek out off tour.
All right.
And I don't either. But every male
They do.
counterpart I know does and talks about it all of the time.
All the time.
Outside of work, inside of work. Like,
Yeah.
I don't know if that's a gender thing, but it's super interesting that we've all said that same thing.
Yeah. Speaking of gender things, since all of us are women, a lot of people starting out in the industry are intimidated by moving equipment and having to lift equipment, which I've never really been intimidated by it. I'm so small that I had to figure out how I was going to move it. So do you guys have any tips, advice?
I think I was more intimidated about guys. They were intimidating me about their attitude. I mean, like, they'd see me and be like, oh, you're going to move that? Oh, this person's loading? Great.
Right.
So I think dealing with that was harder for me. Lifting stuff, I think anybody here would agree. Just get a friend. Find a friend, you know? Yeah, find a friend. There's no reason why you need to do anything on your own. I mean, there's just...
Yeah.
There's stagehands, there's people to help. I think that, you know, being on your feet all day and working, I mean, I'm not really afraid of the lifting. I'm afraid of like pulling, you know, a heavy analog snake through mud and I mean, I'm, you know, you're sitting there coiling it. Your arms get tired. I mean, there's no way around that. I mean, I've had like muscle failure from like just coiling so much heavy cable. I mean, there's no way around it. You gotta, if you're gonna go for a job like that, I mean, you just have to be prepared. It's very physical, you know, lifting the console up, throwing wedges out, monitor-wise, with lighting. Oh my gosh, so much stuff to rig and so much cabling. It's just, there's not a way around it. But when it comes to heavy stuff, just find a friend, you know. Group effort. There's no reason to be embarrassed, and even guys aren't trying to do that stuff by themselves. I mean, they ask for help.
Yeah, don't be ashamed to ask for help, because nothing will be worse than when you get injured. And when you get injured, then you're out of commission for, it could be a very long time.
Could be forever.
It could be forever. You never know what could happen out there. And my shoulder's busted. I had got something called frozen shoulder from dragging stuff around for a year. It is not sexy. It is painful, and it took a really long time to heal. So it's just not worth it. There's plenty of people out there. There's, you know, men out there that are physically stronger, and it's like, it's just a fact. Lend a hand, pitch in, and everybody can get it done.
Know your limits. Because in my early 20s, I went to pick up a follow spot ballast, and that fucked up my back for the next decade. And there's a reason why every show has stagehands. They're there to help. And one of the best skills you can have is knowing how to use your stagehands. You'll see crew, men and women alike, that don't delegate. That's the reason they're there. You don't have to find a friend, find a stagehand.
My favorite thing is watching 4 stagehands stand and watch a touring tech sweat and work his ass off, and they will all just stand there watching him.
Yeah, there's nothing to prove, and there's nothing to be embarrassed about if if you're not able to lift something.
I would say though, staying aware of your body, like knowing your limitations, but also being careful with yourself and being good to yourself. I was not good to myself. Part of the reason why I'm in the position I'm in is because I can't pick up anything. I have a bad back now. And it came from, an injury that I had that I ignored, and I should have seen a doctor, and I didn't, and I kept working, and just the wear and tear with no care, really caught up with me. So stretching, it couldn't hurt for you to pick some sort of exercise to do. Mm-hmm. Pick something. But stretching and staying, aware of, like, wow, my knee doesn't feel right today. Today's the day not to pull the snake. Or my shoulder's bothering me. Today's the day not to throw the heavy cable on your shoulder and pile it all up and throw it in the bin. Today's the day to get your finger out and say, you 4 stagehands, come with me. And then direct them to do all the heavy work. But staying in touch with your physical well-being, because this is a manual labor job, is so crucial.
To add to that, be more aware of like the type of backpack you're using too.
Luggage in general.
Yeah, luggage, your shoes. I have bad feet. I have really flat feet, so I have to really pay attention to the type of shoes I work in because I'm going to be on my feet 15 to 18 hours a day on tour. So I just have to deal with that the way I have to deal with it. This last run with Janelle, after it, my back I was out of whack because I know it's because the laptop I have is absolutely too heavy, but it was on my back the whole time, like all of tour. So you just have to be aware of things like that if you're trying to get into being on tour.
Yeah, I think also we have to be careful as females not to try and overcompensate to prove ourselves. I did that a lot when I was starting. I can lift that, I can carry that, I can push that. And now a lot of times in a truck, and it kind of annoys me, but all the guys will be like, get away from that, we'll lift that. And it's like, I probably can lift heavier things than them because a lot of it is technique. I see a lot of stagehands lifting an Ampeg bass cab completely the wrong way. And I'm like, all right, whatever. You can do it, or I can do it correctly, whatever. But if they're there, use them because you're being paid to help the artist and look after guitars. I'm not necessarily there to lift stuff. We're going to be packing a trailer. We're there to do that, whether we have stagehands or not. So, yeah, we're going to be having to lift things. But yeah, if it's available, use the help. Just because you're female, you don't have to be like, I can do this. I'm super strong. It's fine. Just let somebody else do it if they're there and they're being paid to do it.
Yeah, Kille knows my tech, and he's super skinny. He's average height, but he's not lifting stuff by himself, and he's never had a problem asking for help. So I always go, men don't have a problem with it. Why should women? So ask for help. I think we're going to get close to wrapping up. I'm going to, just because people ask all the time and they're scared off from working in live event production because they think they might want to have a family someday. I think Kille and I are the only mothers on this panel, but I thought we would address being touring moms and how we balance it so that people know?
I actually just got a dog, so I'd like to hear
Okay.
I'd like to hear the answer to this one.
It's like having a toddler forever. How have you balanced being a mom?
Well, sorry about this cough. It's not contagious, I swear. By the way, it's just a dry, annoying cough. I knew I always wanted to have kids, and I was really, I think, sort of at the height of my trajectory professionally when I got pregnant with my first son. And it was not expected or planned, and in retrospect, I'm really glad it happened when it did, because there was always going to be another tour. There was always going to be a bigger temptation, another 18-month tour, which I was 33 when I got pregnant with him, and it was a absolutely perfect time to have my first child because there was still time to have more, and I knew I wanted to have more. And if I had thought about it ahead of time, I would have just kept talking myself out of it, because if you try to figure out how you're going to, it's not a conventional job. All the things that you need as a parent are not available in our line of work. That, you know, daycare is 9 to 5, or if you're lucky, 9 to 8 or 6 to 8. You know, there's no 24-hour daycare, and if you started to think about all those logistics beforehand, it's enough to just be like, I'm not going to do it. So if you want to have kids, do it, because you'll figure it out. And it's not been easy, for sure, but I made a choice when I had my kids to not be an absentee parent. And I was not willing to, you know, take tours that took me out for a long time. And even though it's my first love, I decided to make the switch to doing television at that time, so that I could be home more. But what I found quickly was, even being in television, it was still, you know, very unpredictable schedules. You were constantly working from one show to the next. You're always like trying to piece together your schedule. It's a red hot nightmare for childcare. And so I've never been able, that's probably the greatest challenge for me, has been childcare, just finding someone that can deal with a different schedule every week and unpredictability and needs outside of conventional hours, but you can find it. You know, I've managed to do it, and my oldest son is almost 15. For me, getting the Kimmel gig was a huge deal, because that's the closest thing to like a 9 to 5 job in this line of work. So having a predictable schedule and my weekends available, and I can be present in my kids' lives and still be able to go off and travel and do projects. But I would be lying if I said that it didn't come at a professional cost, you know, choosing my kids over my career. I have had to say no to a lot over the years, and I do it without regret. You know, I wouldn't have changed anything, and now that they're a little bit older, I'm kind of like cranking up the presses again. Like, I feel like I can dip my toe back in a little bit more aggressively than I have for the last decade, I would say.
I agree with Kille. My pregnancy was unexpected. It was also came in the middle of a 10-year breakup. I wanted kids, but at that, if you when I was pregnant, you could ask me, and I'm like, yeah, I don't know, I'll probably never have kids. I was in such denial about it. You can't plan to have kids. All the logistics would be, you would just go, no, there's no way. I was also probably at the height of my career, and ended up turning down about a 3-year REM tour to have kids. But I also realized that as I was turning that down, there would be other tours. I think Kille and both of us are lifers with Pearl Jam. But I think part of it's the band, but part of it is because we both have kids and the way they tour. If I didn't have kids, I probably would have taken that REM tour, and I probably would have stopped working for Pearl Jam. Just because. So it all balanced out, but it's been a lot of hard work. My kids are now 23. I had twins, so I got it done in one shot. They're 23, they're healthy, and they're independent young women now. And of course, I damaged them somehow, but that I would have damaged them if I had been at home too. So that's just the way it is.
And I will say, like, there's something that builds real resiliency in your kids when they are used to just, like, now you're with this parent, now you're with this parent, and like that independence and ability to sort of assimilate to different situations is actually really good for kids. You know, I have fellow parents that won't spend a night away from their kids for the first like 5 years of their life, and I just look at them like they have three heads, because it's just such a foreign concept to me, both as a mother and as a professional. Doesn't mean it's bad. It's just not for me, not for my kids. I like leaving my kids sometimes when they're teenagers.
Sometimes it's good. Yeah. So this is the last question, and then we'll open this up to questions, answers. Over the time period of your careers, how has your career goals changed?
Can I ask a question about the kids? Sure. Actually, did you tour pregnant?
Yeah.
With twins.
I toured up until I was 7.5 months pregnant.
Here's what I would
Oh
not
my
ever
gosh.
recommend. Never, ever, ever say yes to a festival run when you're 8 months pregnant.
No.
No, sorry, it was 7 months. It was, never do that.
That's impressive. Sorry, I had to ask. How has my career changed? My goals?
Your goals.
When I first got started, I just wanted to be part of the action. I remember I got an internship in a studio in Boston, and I hated it. I sat in a room while they hit the snare drum for like 12 hours, and I was like, nope, I'm out. I was like, I quit. They were pissed. They were pissed. Plus a friend got me the gig, so that wasn't good. But I knew, I was like, this isn't for me. I want to be like in the action. I didn't know what I wanted to do. I wanted to be in production somehow. You know, I went to shows and I was always watching the techs and watching everything, and that's what I wanted. So when I first started at the venue, I knew I wanted to do sound. People tried to steer me into lighting, but I'm not a visual person. I was never good at that. I can't draw, I can't paint. Not for me. I wanted to do audio. I wanted to be up on the stage, touching stuff, doing stuff. And so once I started finally getting to the point of mixing, I really liked it. There's something about it. It's going to be hard to pull that away from me. You know, like I've gotten into production management, but like I still mix. I still sneak away and do these fly dates. It hurts when I say no to a tour, you know, because I just love that. I love mixing. But production management locally has been good for me because it's just taught me a lot of things, different view of the industry. You know, it's kind of how these companies and these promoters budget tours, budget shows, how their expectations, and trying to kind of mold that with the artist expectation, the fan expectation. It's a lot. But it's been really good for me. And I think, I don't know who said it earlier, but it might have been Chris. Trying to now being responsible and having like a global view of the needs, like what to order for consoles, really understanding the nitty gritty of what your production needs, you know, and seeing that now, because I'll get writers and I'm like looking at them and reading through them and trying to kind of get a picture of these bands, you know, off a piece of paper, but it's starting to make more and more sense. And then I can address what their needs are. I'm growing in a way I didn't think I would grow. But now, kind of looking forward, you know, I'm 33, and I didn't think that I would kind of succumb to being home and this young, you know. I could see myself running away and just touring forever. I know people that do it. They never come home. They don't even have an apartment. They put their stuff in a rental unit, and that's the dream, and they're going for it. That could be me. You know, that person is me. but I'm also married. I got married 2 years ago, and it's really hard to be gone and still maintain a family. And you just lose touch with that person. You come home and you're like, you haven't seen them for 6 months, and then you have to like reconnect with those people and all your relationships. It almost feels like when you're on tour, life just keeps going at home, and then you come home and you're like catching up on everything. I just needed a break. Like I wanted to see if I could do both. I started doing TV too, at iHeartRadio in Burbank. They do live and live to tape, and that's been really cool. I could totally see myself doing TV. I did Kimmel once. Well, I did the live stage and then I did the inside stage, and that's great. I love that. I love broadcast too. So I could see it going different ways. I think the long-winded answer is, I think as you grow and life happens, maybe you get married, maybe you have kids, whatever, it can mold into something else. And I'm still dealing with being a little apprehensive about it because I worked so hard to be a good monitor engineer. Like I just spent so much time and so much effort and passion in it. It's hard to like step away from it when you're like right there. But for now, I'm embracing new challenges, new opportunities.
For me, it doesn't really change that much. Because at first, I was when I was in Taiwan, I was interning in a venue, and that was like I always a big fan too. I love to go to concerts, and I love the vibe. Like I love music, so that's how it like started. Like and then I figured out like, oh, there's a job, there's a career for doing that. So I start interning at the venue. I do lights and sound, and I was like, okay, I'm pretty sure I want to do this. So yeah, but like we don't have a audio engineering education in Taiwan, so that's why like I come all the way to here to learn. And then so I started like digging into it, and like after I graduate, I work here, and I also do a lot of like freelance gigs, like club or church, all that. Like I always enjoy, but like I was at a point like, because I was an in-house engineer most of the time, like no matter is that venue or church, and I want to do more like festival. I want to do arena show. I want to do like the big show. So that's kind of, and then Rat is looking for shop tech. So I was like, okay, I think that's a good like step for me to get to the next level. Well, working at shop is cool. It's like you get to learn stuff. You get to learn a lot of new stuff. But also, we are very busy at the shop, so I don't get much chance to go out to do a show. So that's kind of like one thing that I was, but like I get to do Coachella this year, and also like a beach festival. Yeah, so and by doing that, because like the hour for Coachella is insane. It's like 18 hours, 20 hours a day, and you are there like 6 in the morning and don't leave till like 3 in the morning, all that, and then come back next day at 7 in the morning. It's crucial, but it's intense, but for me, still so much fun and so worth it. Like every time when we done Coachella, like a lot of engineer, like a lot of people would be like, "Oh, I'm done. I'm not doing this next time." But I was the person like, "Oh, can't wait to do it next year. Like, my coworker were like, oh yeah, great, you can have it. Like, go for it. Yeah. So for me, like, I feel like it doesn't really, like, my goal wasn't really changed that much, like, till now. Like, I'm still like so in love with music and concerts, and that's kind of the thing that like drive me till now. Yeah.
I never planned on being a salesperson for an audio vendor. That was definitely not my goal. I started out as a tech, and then I started mixing, and I like to mix, but I really loved teching equipment. I was definitely more of a geek, and I liked the security that I could give to an engineer, being with them and helping them execute their show, and knowing that if anything went wrong, I had their back. I really loved that aspect of it. And as I mentioned earlier, when I was diagnosed with my back injury, my doc was like, so, how about you change your career a little bit? And at the time, I was lucky, the owner of the company I was working for, I went to him and I said, hey, I can't pick up anything really anymore. I can pick up a 25-foot XLR, and that's about all I'm allowed to pick up. I have a choice. Either I can get promoted by you or change my job for you, or I'm going to leave and go someplace else. Fortunately, he was like, we'll figure something out. And I got into project management and doing more client-related work. And that kind of led me to where I am. I definitely didn't have a goal being a general manager or starting a branch of a big company. I had no idea that I was going to end up doing that. Even when I went to interview with 8th Day at the end of 2015, I was going to do festival work for them. I was going to go project manage festivals. And then they started talking to me about the work that I was doing for the other company I'd worked for. And they're like, would you like to start our branch here? And it was like, I never intended on opening a warehouse, hiring a full-time crew, selling shows. I had no idea I'd be doing what I'm doing. And I think my point in saying all of that is you don't know what tomorrow will offer you. And don't be afraid to change your plan. Don't be so stuck like, I have to be a front of house engineer. You know what? You might not like being a front of house engineer, or you might hate mixing monitors. There are people out there that like you suggest that they mix monitors, and it's like, I suggested you do something terrible to your mother. It's like, I honestly think that you have to be open to the fact of getting into doing something and going, I don't like this. It's not serving me. I'm not happy. I want to go back and mix monitors. I don't like doing production, or I ain't ever mixing monitors again. I want to be a production manager. Just knowing that you're going to change, and that's okay. And you might find yourself doing sales at a lovely 8th Day Sound.
Like I said in my intro, I never thought that this would be my life at 33. I thought I was going to be an opera singer. So my trajectory has changed a lot in the last few years. And even starting in the audio and figuring out that, I love doing audio, I thought I was going to be a mix engineer for a studio, recorded like records and stuff. And that was simply because I just didn't know any other options. Everything that I've come upon I've learned about in or on the job, even about broadcasting engineers. When I started really traveling heavily with, as a front of house engineer, you have to go with your artist to TV performances and direct that engineer on how to mix whatever song they're performing. I didn't know that position existed, a music engineer for TV shows. So that piqued my interest. I'm like, oh, that's an option. So maybe that is something I could do too. So just recently, honestly, I've been thinking about the next thing. After I started production management, that's cool. I like doing it, but only this tier. I never want to be a production manager for Janelle. I just don't want to production manage that type of production. I'm cool with doing it for a Tegan and Sarah or Ella because it's not, I know, just getting to know them, I know it's not going to get any bigger than I want to handle. But now, honestly, I've just been thinking of like the next step of mixing because like Whitney said, I want to tour as long as I can. That's why when I did figure out what's going on my feet and how this is affecting my back, I'm going to start taking better care of myself, or I've started taking better care of myself because I do want to tour as long as my body allows. But one day I do want to mix like American Idol or award shows, Grammys or anything. That is a goal, but I don't know when. You know, I might tour for the next 20 years. I don't know. But I'm just happy that I know there are options for me. Because a lot of times we don't know even other options when we start thinking about goals. Because you think that you could get stuck in one thing, and that's just not the case. Like Meegan just said, don't limit yourself to what you're currently doing or a person that you admire, you see them doing. You don't necessarily have to do that because you don't know if you'll be able to do that or you'll even enjoy what that person is doing. But yeah, just keep your option open. That's what I'm doing.
Well, when I started, my goal was literally just to be on tour. And that was such a hurdle because I didn't know how to break into it. I just wanted to be the roadie on stage. And so when I got to that position and I was working for the first band, my goal then was to do a good enough job to be asked back. And every subsequent band, I just want to do a good enough job to be asked back. That's my goal. I want to be asked to do another tour. And from there, the goals changed to work, on bigger tours, bigger bands. But it's interesting because I've just come off of a 12-week stadium tour as a support band, but we were in stadiums the whole time. And talking to the main tech, he really opened my eyes because he's like, stadiums suck. they're so big and everything is just difficult. He's like, I just want to do arenas now. And I was like, wow, he's like at the pinnacle of what I thought I wanted to do. I was like, okay, well, maybe I shouldn't hold that as like, that's it. Once I reach that, that's it. Of course, I want to do that, but I've seen it, and I've kind of done it. But I'm enjoying the journey as well now, and just not taking it for granted and enjoying where I'm at. And I've done arena tours, and it's great. So I think going back to being asked back and just touring, that's the goal. Just to keep on doing it because that's why we're all in it, because we love it. So we just want to be able to keep doing it. That's my goal.
Yeah, I agree. When I first started touring, I wasn't paid very much, so my goals were to get to that next level of salary. And when you're out there, you see all these salaries. They range so much, but I was very young. Well, I wasn't that young, but I was in my mid-20s when I first started touring, and money seemed to be the thing that was in my face all of the time. And I equated money with success, which is absurd. It's not true at all. It's a blessing to be on the road. It's a blessing to get to tour. Any amount of money that you get paid to travel the world for a living is amazing. A handful of people in this world get to do what we do. And that's something to be grateful for no matter what you get paid. And it took me a minute to learn that. Now what's important to me is not the paycheck. It's the people that you're working with, the team that you're working with. The artist is important. If you're into their music and you love it, even better. But don't turn down a job because of the paycheck and because you think the money is too low. You might take it and end up having the best experience of your life because of the people that are on the road with you. The people that are out there with you make the tour, the good experience. That's your family while you're out there. I toured with a podcast last year, the guys from Pod Save America. Never thought I would ever do that in my lifetime. It was the most meaningful thing I think that I've ever done in close to 20 years of touring. And it wasn't, a lot of money. It's a podcast and it's a political podcast, but the money doesn't matter. It's really meaningless at the end of the day. What matters is the experience and how much joy you get out of it. So.
I guess my goals, early on were to get more towards the design end of things. And now it's a little bit of a turning point for me just in terms of like trying to figure out next steps, kids getting older, what comes next. And I don't know what that looks like for me yet. And so being open-minded to, maybe something totally different or, continuing to do a similar path. But I also kind of fantasize about doing small bands. Like I was lucky to sort of catapult to a higher level of touring really early on. And so I never did the club tours. I never did the small tours. And it's hard to step back after you're used to that level of production and comfort and, everything that's handled. But like, there's so much music that's really inspiring to me, and I would like to dip my toe into like the smaller pools of talent. And like, if I'm in a position at some point to be able to go out, work for less, I do have an empire to run at home, but I can't do it all the time, but I would love to do more of that.
My secret fantasy is to run away and work in a blues club, and no one can find me. So I think that's it. If you guys have questions, we have a microphone right here that you can come up and ask. Yeah, why don't people line up if they have questions?
So I recall one of you saying that you worked with Deadmau5. So something I was wondering, even though he doesn't really consider himself a DJ and his production's pretty intricate, so it's probably not just like plugging in CDJs and mixers, I was wondering how that experience differs from working with a band.
It's night and day. He's a producer and he's a very technical-minded producer, so everything that he does is quite intricate. It's just a different set of instruments. His instruments are of a digital nature. When I first started touring, the first band I ever tour managed was The Strokes, so guitar is like standard rock band. And it's a shift from physical instruments over to digital instruments. And then with most EDM artists, you're dealing with a massive amount of video production and lighting production to a pretty high degree. And then you're getting into things like Kille was saying earlier with time coding and like, it depends on how deep you go into it, but it's like night and day. Yeah.
Since we got two people from Pearl Jam crew, I wanted to know how's the workflow of a band that changes set list all the time. And like, I'm a huge fan. Thank you. Like, I've been to Pearl Jam like 6-7 times, and it always baffles me how it all clicks and lighting and stuff. So how does that work? Because I know they're pretty, they can do anything on stage, and you'd be like, whoa, like, what do I do? Special lighting and
For me on stage, it's just knowing what song they're playing. If they call an audible, change the set list, which, they do, and I'm in the middle of setting up cues or something for the next song, and I'm like, what are you guys doing? So it's just knowing what song that is instantly. Of like, I can be reading the set list, and I'm sitting there going, set list says wish list, and this is not wish list. And getting back out of whatever I was doing. And that just comes from working with them for so long. So for me, again, it's paying attention to them. Kille's got backup lighting programs.
It's really hard. So you have to be really good at busking, because over the course of a week, no one show is ever the same. I mean, if you're a fan, you know that they never ever play the same show, and it's actually gotten harder over the years because now they will look to see what they played in that city, and they'll
make sure
to either not duplicate or to bring some rarities in. So, so for me, especially because of automated lighting, you can busk to a certain extent, but after a while, your whole show is going to look the same, and it's going to be scrappy, and there's going to be it's not going to be visually refined. And so over the years, I've just developed a system of playback where I have to program a massive amount of material at the start of a tour, and then I'll program up until doors most of the tour, kind of making that, so I'll try to get around 85 to 90 songs in the console. And in the way that I'm able to play back, and those songs will be visually composed, And so when they either pull an audible or they change the set list on the fly, or they will always have songs every single night I don't have programmed. So I will look at my cheat sheet, and some songs I can't do this with. They're really specific for certain songs. But I have enough material where I can say, okay, that's a mid-tempo song, and this song has those bones, and I could use that song for that. So I plug in different songs, and it may not have all the parts and pieces I need, but at least it will visually be nice to look at. And our shows have gotten a lot more sophisticated over the years. There's a lot of automation. My last rig, this current iteration of the rig, the entire rig moves. And so being able to busk that on the fly is pretty challenging. But yeah, you have to be really adept at reading the band's body language, because you can almost always tell when they're going to change. And they'll read the crowd, and they'll go off the crowd, and they'll start to talk to each other, and you're like, oh, they're going to change it. So my whole crew, I have every night between follow spots and the techs that are on headset, I probably have 15 people on headset with me, and everyone is sort of trained to get it's like a game of telephone, who can get the clue the fastest.
Hi, my name is Kamana. Thanks so much for doing this. My question is just about transitioning. I know a lot of you mentioned that going to maybe a traditional institution to learn how to do sound engineering or lighting design, whatever it is, isn't necessarily necessary. But I know I'm not the only one in the room who kind of did that and now is stuck with student debt to pay off. But when considering getting into a career in tech, starting off, you're not going to make very much money, so people recommend take a regular desk job and then kind of make that transition. But the finances have to get covered somehow, or else you'll have the collectors knocking on your front door. I was just wondering if any of you have any recommendations for how to continue paying off debt that we're in, but being able to transition into the work that we want to do.
I personally just kept telling Sally Mae that I wasn't working. And deferred it for so long to where now I just send them whatever I decide to send them. I mean, they still call, but I mean, I'm not gonna say do that, but that's what I do. But I wouldn't say take a 9 to 5 like a regular office job though, because that you're gonna be miserable. If right. I know if this is if touring or being in the industry in live production is something that you want to do, then you're a type of person that you're gonna be miserable in a 9 to 5 job. There, like they just told you, there are different production companies. I didn't even know that information, that you can intern and get a small pay and just try to go knock on doors, go to venues and act and tell them that you've been to school, this is what you do, you're willing to work at a certain rate, they'll take you. A lot of venues just won't help to help put these shows up. You'll be able to make it to pay your student loans back if you do that versus going to sit at a job where you're not even nurturing what you went to school for.
Plus, you're not available to do gigs.
Right, exactly.
And hardly any gig happens after 5 o'clock that you can show up.
Even churches pay really well. You can get $500 just for sitting at a church for 3 hours weekly. So look into it. And if church is not your thing, I get it. But if you just need a check,
It's a great
probably need to go that route.
It's a good place for experience and a paycheck.
Go be a stagehand.
Yeah, stagehand or
There are many stagehand brokers in this LA County area. That will get you exposure, experience. You'll be able to at least see what people are using gear-wise. You'll be able to ask questions. There were times when I was a stagehand, I was just talking to Whitney about this, I had to drive to Anaheim, and I'd just do the load-in, and then I didn't want to drive all the way back to Hollywood and then drive back down for the load-out, because who can afford the gas, right? And the time. So I would hang out all day. I wouldn't be on the clock, but I'd hang out with the audio crew and ask questions and learn about things. I agree with Amanda. If you're not focusing on your end game in some way, it's just gonna suck you dry, and we won't be happy.
So I literally I'm finishing up an ebook about this, and I have most of it is about this in particular, and I do say in it, get a 9-to-5 job, because I had a 9-to-5 job. Not necessarily go get a 9-to-5 job if you are already doing a stagehand or whatever. The main point is be available, like Karrie said. You can't do anything unless you're available. So my point is, go get a 9-to-5 job because it pays. Save up. If you and you need to be able to pay rent, feed yourself, pay the student loan. I don't know how it works over here, but in the UK, they don't take anything if you're not earning anything, and then it's very minimal. So you don't really have to worry about it. I don't know how it works here, but I think it's cheap debt. Is it? They
call you every
do they?
day.
Do they?
Yeah, it's brutal. It's brutal
Okay,
over
okay.
here. It's not.
I will research that before I put the book up. But I don't think it's a bad thing if you have a goal. If you can cut your expenses so that you can be available for a good month or two, and then you just go out there, you do stagehand work. Anything that you're bringing in then is great. Because if someone calls you and says, can you do this tour, and you're in a job, you can't do it. You have to be available. Yeah. So you have to be sitting there twiddling your thumbs for a little while. I did it for like 6 months. I was like, because you have to, I did the summer tour where there was just a sprinkling of dates, but that was the first band I worked for, and that was it. I was off because I said yes, but I was like, oh my God, what am I going to do? I don't know if they're going to call me again. And it's really hard at the beginning, but you have to have some money behind you. So if you can cut all your expenses, be really frugal, save some money so that you can have some time off to then go do the stagehand work, go knock on Meegan's door, go do anything you can, make, contacts. 9-to-5 job isn't necessarily bad because it's going to put some money in your pocket and set you up. But it is going to be soul destroying. You just have to, you have to remember, have the faith that you keep going, it'll happen. But it's not the worst thing because it's paying bills. Oh, go figure out that student loan.
I will say, don't think that once you get a tour that you're set either. Yeah. Because after a year and a half with Janelle, she didn't tour for almost 4 years. And I'm in Atlanta. I was before I moved here. I'm in Atlanta, and it was absolutely nothing. I ended up being a substitute teacher or something because I just refused to get another 9-to-5 job. That was something I was not doing. And I knew my worth. I wasn't going to do any crappy, small club stuff either because I just, not that I had an ego. I just knew, I don't want to do that. I needed some money, but not that bad. I'll just rather substitute teach or something. But you have to keep that in mind. You can get a tour, and like Clara said, you save the money from the tour too, because once you get into it, an artist can decide to do anything, and the next thing is sometimes not always there. But you are in a good city, and I think that happened to me because at the time, Atlanta wasn't a good city for what I was trying to do. Like, I wanted to tour and work with other artists. Fortunately, my first touring gig was Janelle, so it was like, how do I go from Janelle Monáe type, to, it was a hard transition for me. And I just, I did the sub, and I decided that I needed to move. But you are fortunate enough to already be here and have so many opportunities that you can go after, that you probably don't have to be in this job, or once you do get a tour or anything else, just have to remember that this is still a fleeting type of job.
It doesn't stop.
Right.
It literally, I've been with the same artist for the past 3 or 4 years. Everyone's forgotten about me. Yeah. Like they ask, am I available? No. Her guys.
We stop trying. Yeah. Like I'll ask somebody if they're available. I'll keep asking them, and I get to I don't like the rejection, and I stop asking. But I will say that working for a vendor that does this, there's a chance that if you're good and your personality's right, which I think we've all touched on, hardworking, head down, good personality, on your game, you won't stop working. And while engineers rely on their relationship with artists and management companies, if you work for a vendor, we're going to put you in the position that we think you're the greatest asset for the company. So there are multiple ways to make money in the industry. And the one asset of being a stagehand is it's part-time work, technically. Mm-hmm. So when you get a tour, bye. But then when you come back home, hey, I'm back, and you've got a gig when you're not working. Mm-hmm. Or if you do get in with a vendor and you're a freelancer for them, like both of these two know, they can call me and say, my October's empty. What have you got? And I can fill in some dates for them. Mm-hmm. So just remember that work comes from many different parts of the world, and there's a lot of us that are very lenient when it comes to, I know you have me booked for 2 days at the end of the month, but I just got a 4-month tour. Mm-hmm. I'll say good luck to you, bye. So keep your eyes open and keep talking to people. That's a lot of it too, is just letting people know what you want and what you're interested in.
And I think there's also something to be said for working in an office and being able to do both. And having that skill set and knowing how to handle yourself in an office is obviously very different than on the road. But if you have both on your resume, it's appealing. And I think you might find that you like certain things about working in an office. There is a structure there that does not exist on the road. Touring is different and it's amazing in a million different ways, but it does lack a certain structure that is just different than working, say at a corporation or an office or, something that's more formal. But I think having both on your resume is appealing.
Thank you. Appreciate it. That was helpful.
Okay, so I didn't know how to word this question, but what about benefits like health care or health and medical and dental?
If you're a freelancer, you've got to provide them for yourself. Yeah. If you work for a vendor, if you're a freelancer, you've got to provide them for yourself. But if you work full time, like my company pays 50% of my family's benefits. I have 401k, all that. There are a few bands out there that do offer benefits to their
not many
touring crew. Dave Matthews being one of them, as far as I know. But there aren't many. Yeah, I think everybody here could probably talk about months where they didn't have health insurance because they couldn't afford it, And being a freelancer, you're definitely paying for it yourself.
Some vendors, you can work full-time. They may have a small pool of their full-timers. There's definitely some lighting vendors that have that model, but they're few and far between. And those full-time people that get benefits through the vendors so that they can only do shows for those vendors. And that's not for everyone. It limits your flexibility and freedom to take whatever work you want. But for some people, that might be worth it. Especially people that are a little further along in their careers. You know, my longtime crew chief, he went to your company, actually. Oh.
Dad?
Yeah. Yeah.
Huh.
But he had, and I lost him because of you guys. But he had reached a point where he was like, I need benefits. You know, he had a family and it totally made sense. So it's really tough. You have to pay for your own health insurance. And that's one of the big reasons I signed up for the TV gig here, because I'm in the union. So I get health insurance and great benefits through the union, and it's totally worth it to me. I went from the price I pay now annually in my premium is what I used to pay per month when I was a freelancer.
Yeah.
Three. Okay, thanks.
It's much less than mine.
My question is actually really similar to that one, but it's basically the other side of that. What are some tools to stay sane as a freelancer, especially once you're past or I guess in the beginning, especially the first couple of years when you're like, this is what I'm doing, but I don't have a decade behind me. I don't know if that even makes sense, but some tools to stay sane.
Take everything that you're offered.
Yeah.
Say yes to everything.
I would agree. I bartended for a long time.
While
like
you
maybe
were touring?
Up until 2015, I quit my bartending job. I did it all through college. Like maybe when I was 18, was working in a restaurant, became a bartender and did it. I quit, I remember, because I quit on New Year's Eve. I was doing I was going to say earlier, you know, you don't have, I know, I'm terrible. You have to be ready for that. You know, if you're working a part-time job and the call comes in, I was like, yep, I'm out. Yeah, I mean, I was just like, oh, can't get my shift covered, sorry. But yeah, I really did. You know, I needed to cut the cord, you know what I mean? But it supported me for a long time, you know? I did that all while I was working at the venue that I was working at in Boston for a year. I worked during the week at the bar, and then I would go to the venue 2 or 3 times a week, whenever they would have me, whenever they had shows. So the hustle is real, whether it's bartending, stagehanding. You know, when I was stagehanding, I worked stagehanding here is that a word? Here in LA, I mean, I was getting paid $12 an hour for 8 hours. I mean, that was like $80. I wasn't able to pay. My student loans right out of college were $500 a month. And I was drowning, you know? There was no way, not even a 9 to 5 was gonna cover that. Like I had to bartend, I needed the cash, you know? I had to figure out the hustle. And then I did these other stagehand, you know, come mix at Joe's Bar and Grill for $100 a pop, 5 bands in a row. I did that. So when you first start, the bartending job, the reason that it worked is that they were flexible with my schedule enough to where it was like, hey, I can work Tuesday, Thursday, Friday night, or whatever. And then I was open the rest of the week, so I could take these little Joe's Bar and Grill or wherever House of Blues is and just kind of mix it all together. So if it dried up, if like the shows dried up, I still had those bartending shifts. I could still count on those, you know? That's what worked for me until 2015 when it started to pick up where I was like, okay, I can quit. You know, on New Year's, I was holding on to it too late anyway. But does that make sense? It's like whether it's gigs, I think it's really important to get your foot in the door with something, stagehand, just so you can let the fire burn, you know? Because you'll fill up against it if you don't get your feet wet. But I didn't want to get behind. I mean, I had $40,000 in student debt, which is, you know, I guess not a lot. Some people I know have way more than that. But I'm still paying it now. You know, I wasn't able to really get into it until a few years ago. Yeah. I didn't want to let it sit. I had to for a while, so it's just accruing interest. You know, when it's in forbearance, it's getting
Yes.
all that. I'm looking back on I can't even look at it because I'm like, how much did I pay in interest? Oh my Lord. You know, I went to a trade school. So do what you got to do to stay sane, because it can be stressful when you're looking at those accounts and you're like, oh my God, they're calling you on the phone. Like, do what you can within reason, you know, within reason. Yeah.
You can't be afraid to take risks either. That's how I ended up on the cruise ship. I just was like, this is me being in Atlanta. It just isn't working. I'm not doing enough to nurture the goal that I'm trying to reach, which is get on tour. So I took a risk and left for 6 months straight and went on a cruise ship. You can't be afraid to, like, she cut the cord and say you're doing it for yourself, and because you know the goal that's ahead.
Thank you.
And you just have to be in the mix too. Like, just even if you take a job for free, like, your face is out there, you're talking to people. It doesn't really matter what. I mean, it matters what you're getting paid, but it doesn't. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
As long as your face is out there, that's what's most important. You could be in a room with somebody at just the appropriate time when they needed somebody, and you were there, as opposed to sitting at home in your apartment, you know, watching Netflix.
Awesome. Thank you.
Anyone else?
It's mostly for Meegan. How did you? So I work for a vendor, and I've done A2, I've done festivals, I've done like Patchmaster and stuff. But how did you? How do you get to a point where you start turning down A2 gigs to start getting underpaid for front of house gigs and stuff to try to become a mixer at that place, you know? Because that's where, like, I'm trying to transition.
It's a good question, actually.
Yeah. Because I've been on tour too, and it's like, I did fly tech, and it's like, I liked it, but I don't want to do that, you know?
I think
I
can honestly say for myself, personally, when I worked for a vendor and I was a technician and an aspiring engineer, I worked with men the whole time.
Yeah.
There wasn't a woman that worked for the company I worked for that did technical work. And I just did what people didn't want to do because I didn't want to hear them complain.
Yeah.
Right? So, dude didn't want to mix monitors, I'll mix monitors.
Yeah.
Dude didn't want to deal with RF, I'll do the RF. I'll do the intercom. Oh, you don't want to mix front of house? I'll do it today. Yeah. The most useful people we have on our roster do not care what they are doing.
Yeah.
I call them, I say, are you available September 16 through 19? Yeah, I am. Cool. There's no, what am I doing? What is it? What's the gig? They might ask eventually, but there's a group of people who work for us that are like, I'm there. I'll do whatever. Yeah. I just want work. I think work brings work too. So the more you're out there, the more you're on site, the more you're talking about what you want. Yeah. You know, I have people who I'm constantly working. How Chris was describing, you know, the average tour manager world, that's an account manager too. My phone is always ringing. I've got email. I probably have like double digits in email because I've been here talking and not answering things. But I honestly think that if you are talking to somebody and saying on the regular, I'm super interested in an opportunity to mix. So I'm going to put you out as the monitor tech on a tour. You might mix monitors for the opener. Yeah. Eventually, when you're the system engineer on a tour, you are definitely mixing front of house for one of those opening acts. It is not too often that smaller bands, when they're an opening act on a big tour, carry somebody. I think this goes for lighting people too, where it's like her front of house tech, the person who's babysitting that console for her, is running lights for that opener, guaranteed. It might be a limited use of that rig, same as how we kind of try not to let the openers be so loud, you know. but it's opportunities. And then those opportunities keep opening up.
Yeah, and you know what opening band I was mixing? Pearl Jam.
That's the
Serious.
thing. Like,
they
then
were my opening band on Red Hot Chili Peppers. I knew the road manager, and I said, yes, I'll mix them too. So you never
know. And then, like, you're Amanda's tech. Something happens in her personal world, whether she has a family member that's taken ill and she's got to go. Who's going to mix the show? Well, her tech's been here. Her tech's sat next to her. Mm-hmm. She knows the show. Let's see how she does. And then Amanda can't finish out the tour. You're mixing front of house for Janelle fucking Monáe. Yeah. You know, like, to me, that those opportunities of PA teching and monitor teching and RF teching and all the things, all those mundane things, will lead to you mixing. You just have to be patient. Okay. And you have to keep saying, yeah, I'll do that. I'll learn how to do that. Yeah. I'll figure that out. Tech an SD12? Well, I've never used one and I've never touched it, but I'll come in and learn it and I'll tech it, because you're going to have that opportunity to mix. And then when you do, do a good job, good. You know, and make it so people want to hire you again, right? Yeah. But yeah, that's.
Well, even with that, but Amanda, like, because I'm mixing at a church right now, and some people don't. I mean, they do like see it as a job, but they don't. They're like, oh, you're at a church.
Yeah, like, you can't worry about that.
Just ignore that.
Yeah,
doesn't matter.
You have to.
Mixing.
I'm in total agreement with Meegan. Like, you have to do everything. That was me before I got on tour. I would do anything. Even now, though, I have to tell people, you can call me to do like talking heads, because they think, oh, this is not. No, I just want to work.
She's been front of house tech on a festival.
Yeah, all the time. When I moved to LA, it was 5 years into being with Janelle, and I told Meegan, I just want to work. Yeah. You have to be open to every opportunity and know that it's going to lead to the final goal of whatever that is for you. And it still offers you different to see what you actually want to do. Yeah. If you do different jobs and do take advantage of the different opportunities that are before you.
Cool, thank you.
Anyone else? All right. Done. Huh?